Discrimination is tied in with like individual and systemic oppressions to create an environment that is physically, mentally, and emotionally unsafe for any marginalized or minority individual.
How do you define discrimination?
I would define discrimination as any act given against a certain group or a certain particular person where they are unequally or unrightly judged based on a stereotype or prejudice that has been associated with them.
Lack of opportunity as well as of a sense of worth.
Discrimination is limiting a minority group or a group that is seen as inferior to the majority society from opportunities.
Prejudice in practice.
Intolerance of another group based on either race, religion,
an intentional or unintentional malicious act. What do you believe is the root of discrimination?
I believe the root of discrimination comes from the centuries of systemic domination over somebody, defining power as power over something instead of like power in collaboration. And so if you perceive your own power as needing to be better than somebody else, then you will use that to partake in a system that exploits other individuals.
I would say fear, kind of, and you kind of fear what you don't know, so that's the root.
I believe the root of discrimination is insecurity.
People trying to be superior, they feel inferior to some group, so then they feel the need to feel superior to another group. And I think it continues because a lot of people, they don't always realize this need that they feel.
I think the root of discrimination is solely misunderstanding, and then also years and years of systemic ideologies and things that have been placed in different areas of the world.
Two things. I think fear is a big one, of being like threatened, and just lack of understanding.
Who are not open-minded and are closed-minded and do not have a will and wanting to learn from people. I think that's where hatred comes from, discrimination.
I think the root of discrimination is ignorance and closed-mindedness.
What experiences with discrimination have you had?
I've had very minor experiences with discrimination, mostly when I was younger, because I feel like children especially just repeat what they've heard adults say. They don't actually understand or know.
I've had just feeling like I can't do something because of my race, or having a lack of being unable to connect to people who identify with the same racial background as I do. I think a lot of people think that that's not discrimination, but it is.
I was at a gas station in Zionsville, and I was wearing my scarf, and I guess that's what triggered it. And I was just putting gas in my car, and this guy walked up to me and he was just like, "Just take it off." And I was like, "What do you mean take it off?" And he was like, "Why don't you just take it off? Like, you're living in America. Like, that's not necessary."
For me, I was told in my senior year of high school that I should go back to my country and that I should not be in America.
They were just like comments and jokes and just stereotypes that were constantly repeated.
I was probably one of 3 or 4 on my team and at this specific track meet that were just white. And I went with my mom and I was super excited. I wasn't thinking about the other people. Up to this point in my life, I hadn't really thought about people looking different from me. They were just other people. And we get to the track, we'll walk out onto the field, and I'm excited with my mom. My mom was like not feeling, I couldn't tell anything specific from her, but someone in the stands was all like 8th grade kids. Someone yells, "White bitch!" And my mom like looks like she's seen a ghost. She looks scared.
And the guys started talking about how Arabs don't wear deodorant because it's like against their religion, even though Arab is obviously not a religion. And he started talking about how Arabs have terrorist training camps in their mosques.
As a trans and queer individual, I see a lot of the spaces in which my identities are not welcome.
Being not being taken seriously or thought of as being less than just because of my gender.
Circumstances where I actually wore the hijab, and you know, people automatically assumed that I couldn't speak English and that, you know, that I'm a terrorist or something.
In classrooms, and people not using my or my friend's pronouns, or being stared at down the street when people hold hands just because they're the same gender. Like,
my first grade teacher, even though I was in the highest reading group, told my parents and told the administration that I was dyslexic because I kept mixing up my B's and my D's, and they had me tested for it, and it wasn't because I was dyslexic, it was because I was a year younger than everyone in our grade.
With being adopted into a white family, I've had struggles with people calling me an Oreo, which means I'm white on the outside and white on the inside, black on the outside. So that's very stereotypical.
What experiences have you had with discrimination or have you seen on campus?
I have unfortunately seen a great amount of discrimination here at Butler. In the counseling center, I had asked to speak or work with a counselor of color or of some minority, and they led me to believe that there was a counselor at the center that identified as black, and they told me that I couldn't see her simply because they are unable to connect a student and a counselor because of race.
on this campus, a lot of classrooms don't allow a space for queer and trans people, whether it's not asking pronouns at the beginning of a class when you're first doing icebreakers.
But again, it was my first year. This was my first semester as well. I was working 4 jobs. Came to class late one day, which I had previously explained to my professor. But this professor took it upon himself during the time preceding my entrance into the class, go over my test in front of the class, and that's just make an example of what it meant when you come in late. And then I walked into class after having experienced this, and one of my classmates explained to me the dynamic because I wasn't sure everybody was laughing at me when I walked into class. Explain what happened.
On campus, I don't really think I have seen much, but that doesn't mean that discrimination hasn't been going on.
Places where I see discrimination the most on campus are probably fraternities, sometimes sororities. I've seen people not get let into parties, or they get into a party and the frat brothers or whoever will just watch them and follow them around the house because they think they're gonna steal.
Dancing with the guy sort of like didn't know what to do like my first week, and he started like getting a little bit more aggressive, I would say, and he ended up putting his hand around my neck, and that made me feel really weird. and he even ended up like inviting me in the corner of the room and trying to kiss me, and I was sober and he was sober, and so there was no alcohol in the mix, and it still happened, and it's still a thing that happens here at Butler.
The way that the bathrooms are set up, they oftentimes have a single stall, gender-neutral bathrooms, because trans individuals like me in the past couple of years have pushed the administration to make that change, but there are still buildings like the business building and the science building that don't have any sort of gender-neutral bathrooms, whether multi-stall or not.
I actually haven't had many instances on campus. I can't think of a single one, so that's a plus.
Things like little microaggressions that are just like, oh, like your hair is so fun, or it's so pretty, or like exotic and stuff like that.
And then said that I'm sorry, I forgot that you worked at Atherton. I said, I don't work at Atherton. You got the wrong person confused. That same professor also mistaken me for a football player.
Being in groups with males, sometimes you're treated a little bit differently.
On campus, I've had people say that I talk proper. People ask me, where are you adopted from? Assuming that I'm from a different country or something.
What do you see Butler as an institution doing to prevent discrimination?
I see Butler as an institution only half following through with a lot of the promises towards diversity and fixing discrimination on campus.
I really don't see Butler doing much to prevent discrimination. Like, to be really honest, I don't know if they're trying. I don't know if they have anything planned, but I know I've been part of groups that approach them with these issues. And we say, like, we see this, there's proof, you can go watch it happen for yourself. What do you want to do about it? And they say, oh, this is something we want to work on. We'll go talk with our teams. We'll go talk with like our managers about it. And so far, nothing has happened.
They right now are really trying to just talk to minorities and see kind of their perspective and really ask us what would be helpful.
People of authority here, like my RA, has always been open about me going to the HRC, and everyone at the counseling center has always been really open and normalizing mental health. So I would say they're going in a good direction in that way, but we still have a ways to go.
There are positive directions that are being made, and new hires, and an increase of faculty and staff who are looking to advocate for their students, and I think that's really beneficial.
If I were to give an honest critique of Butler's actions towards social injustice, I think that in a lot of different instances, we're more reactive than proactive.
I think the first thing is to make it open to dialogue and discussion, which is something that it seems that they are very apparent and intentional about.
With the Diversity Center, Butler is allowed to have a safe place and a sense of inclusiveness for people who struggle with discrimination.
I think the big thing of educating our students on like the diverse cultures that we do have here, while they may not be majorly present, they are here. Like discussions in the DC, the Diversity Center, are really big because they help educate people on different cultures, cultural appropriation, how to self-reflect and identify yourself if you are discriminating against someone else.
Honestly, one of the things that I've noticed is that I think the majority of students here are a lot well informed, of political biases and the media and the issues within our society, I guess.
What can Butler do to further prevent discrimination?
I think Butler can outright talk about discrimination, not just offer these places. They can actually address discrimination in itself specifically.
So sure, you have your BCRs, but even though that's a requirement, it kind of dilutes the purpose sometimes, because you go there and you sit and you don't pay attention and you swipe in and you swipe out. But having these like open, almost like forums or current events forums, when something happens, like we're not addressing different shootings or happenings like we could be, especially at a university when we're all trying to learn from the world around us.
Education is the only way to prevent discrimination. You can stop it, like you can see it happening and just be like, stop. But to prevent, for example, a brother in a fraternity from initially thinking this person looks different, they look like someone who might steal, you have to teach them from the beginning.
Definitely think just maybe making people aware of discrimination, like just like they do. And the Think About It course, they talked about healthy relationships, rape, all this other stuff. They didn't really talk about racial discrimination though, or any other types of discrimination and how to prevent it there.
Overall, having an all-inclusive environment.
Butler, to further prevent discrimination, needs to genuinely invest itself in the safety of their students.
This might sound a little radical, but you're letting in certain people who have been brought up on discriminatory ideals. And if you continue to create an environment and a culture where you're bringing in those students, it's not going to change. So until you change the culture and the people who you're bringing in, nothing will change.
I think like making it absolutely necessary to come down here and give a tour of it when tours of campus are given to incoming students is a really good way to go about publicizing the Diversity Center. And I also definitely think that trying to get people of different backgrounds to come in for Diversity Center events, because normally people that come in for the events are people that are already part of the Diversity Center, so getting someone or a group of people that is outside of that realm.
Let's see. Greek life could be more inclusive based on origin.
Or is it? Yeah. And how can students help fight discrimination?
I think, especially for white students, to fight discrimination, you really need to self-reflect and first see, are you the one discriminating? Because I think a lot of students don't think they are, they don't mean to, but the fact is, it is happening without a lot of people knowing it.
Is that knowledge is power. And in order to institute justice, power is necessary.
Ask questions. Realize that there are people that you have probably never seen before a day in your life from a cultural standpoint, and that you want to get to know it, and you don't want to come in with preconceived notions of negative and closed stereotypes. And if you have a question about a culture or an ethnicity or traditional practices of a culture, then just ask.
To be anti-racist, not non-racist, and that basically means that if you see something wrong, you have to do something about it. You can't decide for yourself that you're not going to do it, because that perpetuates the system and people think if there's not any backlash for what I'm doing, then I can keep doing it.
Or do they just like assume that someone else is going to do it for them? So I definitely think that speaking up when you see something that's wrong is very important.
Being open-minded and really trying to understand the root of someone else's beliefs and customs and religious aspects.
It's really easy to explain to someone who's your friend that they are doing something possibly offensive.
This is a very white, very upper middle class campus, and to recognize your privilege or lack thereof within that situation is a first step into working against discrimination.
Any student or any individual can help fight discrimination with really standing up for each other.
I think that we as students have so much power in saying what is wrong and saying what is right, and I think that our voices can be heard.
But the students make up the culture.
By having an open mind, by saying something, if they hear or see a situation happen, I know that's harder or it's easier said than done to stand up, but it can be done. And just trying to become more aware of themselves. I mean, there's so much online now. There's so many people you can talk to about it. You can come to the Diversity Center. You can learn more about how to intervene and prevent situations that would cause discrimination. So I think there's a lot of resources you can use.
And what is one word that you would use to describe how to fight discrimination?
One word. I would say no fear.
Education. Major key.
It'd probably be welcoming. So you have to have a welcoming mindset. You know, you can't block yourself off before you can even begin to understand the situation.
Teaching. Open-mindedness.
Education.
Intention. So it has to come from a place of intention.
Education.
Knowledge, I think, like knowledge, being informed.
Education.
Unity.
Love.
Definitely, I would say education. Education.
I would say power, because people think power means like you're offensive, you're outward, you're bold. But power, there's a lot of power in listening, there's a lot of power in understanding other people. So, like however you would take it, I would say power. Okay, this is my discrimination story, I guess. I didn't think I was going to be discriminated against, basically. I hadn't been exposed to it at all until I was sexually assaulted when I was 15. And then I tried to go through the legal process when I was 17 and basically was told that I wasn't going to win and that it was a waste of my time. And I had a male detective. He was honest with me, which was good and bad because he tried to help me, but also he said, there's not much we can do, you're not gonna win, he has money, he's white, he has no prior offenses. And it's still something that I live with every day I come to college. Even going to parties and stuff, it's not the same experience. It's something where some things I can't do that normal college kids do because I have to feel in control of my body at all times. And I would say that a lot of people wouldn't look at me and know that, or know that I've experienced that, and that especially how I present myself, it's not who I am, but it's what has happened to me. When I went home for fall break, most people think of going home as an amazing thing. It's where you feel safe. It's where you get to see your parents, your pets. I love my dog. Her name is Sandy. She's a golden retriever. And what happened to me when I went home is I got jumped by I think a friend of my assaulter, and he basically shoved me into my car and left, just wanted to scare me to make sure I wouldn't like put his name out there. And basically, I went through all that. I told my parents. There's not much you can really tell your parents in that situation. I came back to Butler with a black eye. I thought about lying about what happened many times just because of the culture here, and I thought people wouldn't believe me, or people would think I was joking, or people really just wouldn't accept what had happened. So, but I didn't, which shows my growth from when I was 15. I said I was jumped, which is true, and I haven't told people why per se, but it's important to know that no matter who you are, sometimes you aren't safe in your own home and where you think you are. So